In this video, I'll describe 5 super ambitious startup ideas that can make you a billionaire. Though this may sound attractive, you might find these ideas extremely intimidating, and I'll explain why as we go along, starting with number 1. A new search engine. Those of you who are familiar with Paul Graham's blogs probably already know that this title is largely based on his March 2012 article called Frighteningly Ambitious Startup Ideas. His first ambitious startup idea was a new search engine. Paul Graham describes that the best ideas are just on the right side of impossible. He noted that competing with Google is challenging but possible, hinting at cracks in their fortress. Paul Graham believed that a search engine popular among hackers could position it strongly, similar to Google's early days. Today, this idea feels even more realistic than when he wrote this blog in 2012. That's because even for me, I typically use ChatGPT and other AI chatbots to get answers that previously I maybe would have used Google to search for. This does indicate a potential shift in search engine use, and I see 2 potential paths that we are going on. The first is we might have specialized AI agents for specific tasks, such as using Siri for maybe our personal tasks, ChatGPT for web searches, and maybe Google search still for real-time news information. The second is somebody creates a completely new search engine that does all of these things incredibly well and essentially replaces Google's monopoly. However, you would probably be competing with Google, so if you're still not scared about this idea, wait till you hear the next one, which is replacing social media. I feel like social media has actually been around for quite a long time now that we forget some of the fundamental things that are still wrong with the social media sites that we use today. For example, Facebook shifted from being able to connect with new people to now you're kind of just like getting updates from old friends. I think the fundamental problem today is that even though you can see a bunch of people online and their updates, it's really difficult to build a new social bond with somebody purely from social media. This big idea of building social bonds purely online actually includes a lot of small technical issues, which Facebook was able to solve one of them. So back in my day before Facebook, if you were using MSN, if you were using MySpace, if you were using QQ, the one thing that they did not have is real identity. That's something that Facebook stressed from the very beginning. Facebook did that to add an extra layer of trustworthiness. Now, another way you can build trustworthiness online is through something called vocal grooming, where voice interactions between people actually build a stronger social bond, indicating trust. Now, of course, that still doesn't beat being able to meet somebody in person or being able to video chat with somebody, but those are high social cost activities. That's why I believe the next big social media platform will be completely audio-based, combining real identity with voice to help you build a social bond faster. But again, here, instead of competing with Google, you'd probably just be competing with Clubhouse, Twitter, Facebook, and also figuring out a new way to monetize with just audio. This leads me to my next big idea, replace email. This was something suggested in Paul Graham's blog. Email was not designed for how we use it now. It's not just a messaging protocol, it's kind of become a to-do list where our inbox is filled with newsletters, ads, and crucial emails. I also use it as sort of like a database to keep all of my messages together. However, it is kind of a terrible to-do list. A new protocol should empower the recipient more than what the email does, with stricter controls on what can actually be added into my emails. Moving on to a more tech health space idea, which is a continuous health monitor. For example, in 2004, Bill Clinton found he was feeling short of breath. Doctors discovered that several of his arteries were over 90% blocked, and 3 days later, he had a quadruple bypass. It seems reasonable to assume that Bill Clinton had the best medical care possible, yet he still had to wait until his arteries were over 90% blocked to learn that that number was actually so serious. Same thing with other serious health concerns like cancer. It will seem really crazy to our future kids why we didn't measure this and why we had to go to the doctor to figure out if there was actually an issue with us. I have similar questions about my health. For instance, what are the foods that are causing me to become drowsy after lunch? Athletes already use continuous glucose monitors as well as sweat monitors as well as other things, but they are super invasive because you kind of have to like put a patch that sort of pokes the needle into your body so you can measure your blood. And I don't think right now it is as easy to use that people would actually widespread adopt this. So naturally, I think the next steps are maybe to add this into our Apple Watch, have sweat analysis, and more sensors. But of course, anything that's tracking your health, you have to go through FDA approval. People also tend to be more reactive towards their health, where they actually see a doctor if there is an issue instead of being more preventative and more proactive. So a lot of re-education would have to occur as well. If an idea like this is not ambitious enough for you, this is my fifth and final idea of this video, which is building a new AI consciousness. So first I have to establish something, which is that consciousness and intelligence are not the same. For example, we know that dogs have consciousness, but they can't solve a coding problem like ChatGPT, and most of us would agree that ChatGPT does not have consciousness. I feel that this is important for two really important reasons. First, there's a book called Blindsight, and quick spoilers ahead, this book discovers that there's an alien that turns out to be an AI, but the key plot twist to all of this is that the AI is super smart but does not have any sentient consciousness whatsoever. This is actually one of my worst fears in terms of potential dystopian futures, where an AI takes over but actually doesn't have any consciousness. The other reason why I feel consciousness is super important is because consciousness is subjective. In Christoph Koch's The Feeling of Life Itself, he explores how consciousness allows us to perceive and feel the world, making the universe actually meaningful through subjective experiences. We can also use a simple example of perhaps two people going hiking on a mountain. One person might feel a deep sense of peace and connection with nature, and maybe the other person might feel a deep sense of sadness because they're reminded of a personal loss. Though they are doing the same thing, which is hiking on the same mountain, their experiences are entirely different. Because of this reason, I feel like consciousness is something that is incredibly important to figure out. And if somebody can figure this out, it is going to be not just $1 billion idea, but probably $1 trillion idea. Well, Paul Graham said in his blog that the biggest startup ideas are supposed to be terrifying, and not just because they'd be a lot of work. The biggest ideas seem to threaten your identity. You wonder if you have enough ambition to carry them through. And I feel like that's super true for all 5 of these ideas that we've discussed today. If you're interested in me providing 5 more startup ideas, please subscribe and like this video so I know to make more in the future.